ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. O Ramakrishna, the establisher of the eternal religion, the embodiment of all great religions, the best of all incarnations, we salute thee. In the last reading class, we left at page 435 of this book, Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, in the chapters, a few principal events of the Master's life. From page 435, the para 15, we shall continue today. An important event took place in the Master's life by the will of the Divine Mother a year before his mother passed away. In 1875, there arose a desire in the Master's mind to meet Keshav Chandra Sen, the leader of the Brahma Samaj of India. It was a Hindu organization, a reformed Hindu organization, which Keshav Chandra Sen, a very, very promising spiritual leader of Bengal, was leading. So a desire arose in the Master's mind to meet him. While the Master was in ecstasy, he received the direction of the Universal Mother in this matter, and knowing that Keshav with his disciples were then engaged in a spiritual practices at one Jayagopal Sen's garden house in Bulgaria, a few miles to the north of Calcutta. He went there with Hriday, from whom we have this information. So he went to meet Keshav Chandra Sen. That means he had not met him earlier, the first meeting. He went in the horse cart sent by Captain Vishwanath. Captain Vishwanath's carriage he used and reached the place at about 1 p.m. The Master wore that day a piece of red bordered cloth. The lower extremity of its front, tucked in folds, was thrown up over his left shoulder and it was swinging behind his back. That was his usual way of wearing his cloth. So he had worn the cloth in the usual way. Hriday got down from the carriage and saw Keshav and his followers sitting on the ghat of the garden pond. The garden house, there was a big pond. So on the stairs leading to the water, which is called the ghat, the stairs leading to the water, they were all sitting on the stairs and they were doing their spiritual prayers, etc. Coming up to him, he informed Keshav, "My maternal uncle is a great lover of God," Hriday is telling Keshav, "and likes to hear talks and songs on Hari, on God. Listening to them, he gets inspired and enters into ecstasy, bhava. He has heard that you are a great devotee of God and has come here to listen to the talks on divine glory from you. If you kindly agree, I shall bring him here." See, the God himself going to the devotees. We hear in the scriptures that God is so affectionate to his devotees. He humbles himself and comes down to the level of the devotees and goes to their own place instead of asking them to come or commanding them to come to him. Sri Ramakrishna demonstrates it. "I shall bring him here if you consent." Then Keshav gave his consent. The devotee consents. "All right, bring the Lord here." Then Hriday helped the Master in alighting from the carriage. We all know he was very weak to climb up and climb down. Though he was hardly 50 years, but his tremendous spiritual practices had weakened his physical form, physical personality. So he had to be helped to get up and get down from the carriage. So Hriday helped him to get down from the carriage and accompanied him. Keshav and others were anxious to see him, but when they saw him, their eagerness cooled down and he was taken to be an ordinary man. You see, Sri Ramakrishna was so simple, it was impossible to gauge his greatness. So simple, too simple. And so they also thought that here is an ordinary man, much more ordinary than the ordinary householders. How can he be a great spiritual person? That is how their enthusiasm to see a spiritual man in their as they had in their imagination was cooled down. Master came to Keshav and said, "Is it true, gentlemen, that you have all the vision of God? I have a desire to know the nature of that vision. That is why I have come to you." See the high expectation of Sri Ramakrishna from the devotees, that they should have had vision of God. If the sincere prayers must always bring down God, and God must appear before the devotees. So you are all great devotees. Certainly you have had vision. So Sri Ramakrishna expresses that way. That is why I have come to you. In that way, the topic of God was taken up. We cannot say what Keshav said in answer to the Master's words, but the Master, we were told by Hriday, sang the famous song of Ram Prasad, the great devotee and singer. Who knows, O mind, how Kali is? She cannot be seen by the study of the 6 darshanas, 6 systems of philosophy. Through the scholarship, God cannot be seen. He can be approached only through love, through devotion. And immediately entered into samadhi, went into the deep spiritual state, ecstasy. When they saw that state of ecstasy of the Master, Keshav and others did not regard it as a high spiritual state. Even then their faith did not awaken. So they said, oh, it must be just some sort of epilepsy. That is how people used to think. They thought that it was mere feigning or due to a derangement of the brain. That was epilepsy. With a view to bringing him back to normal consciousness, Hriday now began uttering the pranava, the sound of Om. So he went on repeating Om into his ears. At this, his face brightened up with a sweet smile. Thus regaining partial consciousness, the Master now went on explaining profound spiritual matters in so simple a language, with the help of common examples, that all were charmed and sat looking steadfastly at his face. These people who did not believe, they all became believers by one expression of his spirituality on his face, that charming smile and that spiritual ecstatic light coming out from his body and the face. Nobody noticed that the time for bath and meal was long past, and imperceptibly the hour for the next prayer was almost come. Several hours he has been teaching. Standing amidst them, he forgot all time. That was the charm of the spiritual person, Sri Ramakrishna. Seeing that the mood of theirs, the Master said, if any other animal comes to a herd of cattle, they go forward to gore it. Anything other than the cattle, that animal is gored by the other cattle. But if a cow comes, they lick its body and it is theirs. Our case is just the same today. The reaction of Sri Ramakrishna's to the reception that they gave So he expresses. He says, I consider all of you as my own, and I can feel that you are also feeling it in your heart, that I am your own. That is why you are all giving me a welcome with your silence, with your getting absorbed into my speech, etc. He then addressed Keshav, the leader, and said, your tail has dropped off. Your tail has dropped off. Unable to understand its meaning, the followers of Keshav looked annoyed. What is this sort of expression? Your tail has dropped off. Tail is only for the monkey usually we refer to. And he is referring to our Keshav Chandra as a monkey and he has a tail. So they were annoyed when the master charmed them all by explaining the significance to them. Look here, said Sri Ramakrishna. As long as tadpole is the younger one, younger stage of a frog. So tadpole has its tail. It lives only in water and cannot come up on sand. But when the tail drops off, it can live on land as well as in water. Even so, as long as a man has the tail of ignorance, he can live in water of the world only. But when the tail falls off, that means the tail of Maya goes away, he can as freely move about in the world as in the existence, knowledge, bliss, that is God. So he can dwell in this world, dwell in the spiritual world also. This is called the falling off of the tail. Your mind, O Keshav, has now attained that state in which you can live in the world as also in the existence, knowledge, bliss, Satchit Ananda. So you can live in God also, that means God's thought, meditations and prayers. You can absorb insight in that also. At the same time, you can lead a successful life in this society also. So this is called the living on in both water and on the land. Master is pronouncing all these things at the first meeting for a few hours. How could he judge Keshav's depth of his realization that he has attained to that level? How could he just say in the state of his mind, you have attained to the spiritual level? You can dwell on God, you can also lead a successful life in the worldly society also. So this was the greatness of Sri Ramakrishna. Such a simple looking person, but his vision and his depth of sight went so deep into every man's heart. It looked through as if through the glass of an almirah. Everything that was inside the human being, not only his present, his past and future also. So that greatness is revealed in this meeting. The master spent a long time discussing various topics like this and came back to Dakshineshwar on that day. It was a great visit and that captured the heart of the leader of the Brahma Samaj and then almost all the important members of that Samaj. Keshav's mind was so much attracted towards the master since he saw him first that from now on, till his passing away, he deemed it an honor and a privilege to meet Sri Ramakrishna and enjoy his divine company very often. He would either come himself to Dakshineshwar or take the master now and then to his house, which he had named as Kamal Kutir. His residence at Calcutta. The relation between the master and the Keshav deepened so much that both of them felt a great want if they did not see each other even for a few days. At such times, the master used to go to Keshav in Calcutta or the latter would come to the former at Dakshineshwar. Besides, Keshav considered it to be a path of the annual festival of the Brahma Samaj to come with his companions to the master and take him to them, that means to the assembly of the Brahma Samaj, and spend a day with him in divine conversations, whole day from morning till evening. Many were the occasions when he with his followers came to Dakshineshwar in a steamer singing the glory of God, had the master brought up into it and took a trip on Ganga, all the while listening to his ambrosial teaching. One of his great travelling with Keshav Chandra Sen in the steamship is mentioned in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna in all its details. Remembering the scriptural injunctions, Keshav never came empty-handed to Dakshineshwar. Whenever he came, he brought with him some fruits and placed them before the master, and like a devoted follower, sat at his feet and conversed with him. This was the usual convention in the old society, which was so highly spiritual. So they would never go to a pious person without offering something, a fruit or at least a betel leaf, and afterwards only they would start conversation. So Keshav started learning all these injunctions of the smritis, the code of life of the Hindu religion. At one time the master said to him, by way of a joke, Keshav, you charm so many people by your lectures. Say something to me. So he wants a lecture for his own person. So you lecture before me. Keshav replied humbly, Sir, am I to come to a blacksmith shop to sell needles or carry coal to Newcastle, that they used to say? That is, am I to carry coal to Newcastle here itself? It is said, please say something yourself and let me listen. People are charmed as soon as I tell them a few words of yours. See how much he is simple. He has absorbed the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and just he is open to acknowledge where from he has got it. One day the master explained to Keshav at Dakshineshwar that if one accepted the existence of Brahman, the Supreme Godhead, one had similarly to accept the existence of the power of Brahman, and that Brahman and its power were eternally one and the same. Keshav accepted it. Till then, he had not thought about this part of philosophy, that Brahman and Shakti, they are inseparable. If you accept God, then you have to accept His inscrutable power, called His Shakti, His power. So this power is described by all the philosophers. It is a special power of God. It is inscrutable. It doesn't come under any law. All the other powers like electricity or magnetism or other forces, they come under certain rules and regulations. They cannot go beyond that. They have to behave like that. But the power of God is inscrutable, inexplainable. Anytime it can act in any way it likes. So, inscrutable power. It is called the Maya, the very, very inscrutable power of the Lord. So, that is always with the Lord. If you accept the Lord, His power of this inscrutability also is with Him. Keshav accepted it. Till then he had not given thought to it. After Sri Ramakrishna's mentioning it and explaining it, he accepted this. That means it is through the power of God only that we are all here in this universe. This whole universe is a creation through which the power of Sri God is expressed. God expressed Himself through this universe, creation of this universe. So the express form of God, you can say, is this power of God. So, if you accept this world, you accept the inscrutable power of God, which is appearing to us in the form of this whole universe, creation. The master then told him that, like Brahman and its power, the three entities, namely the divine verse, that is the scriptures, shastras, the devotee, and the divine Lord, are non-separate. In other words, eternally identical. The three, namely the scriptures, the devotee, and the divine Lord. Here, the word she used, it was Bhagavata. Scriptures, yes, one of the scriptures is Bhagavata, famous. So he used the word Bhagavata. The devotee, and Bhakta, and the divine Lord, Bhagavan. Bhagavata, Bhakta, Bhagavan are one. And the one is the three. So it is God Himself appearing as the scriptures, that is His divine word, and His devotees, and He Himself. So we see three forms, but it is only one only. Everything is God. Keshav understood and accepted these two. He accepted. The master went on to say that the three, namely the Guru, Krishna, and the devotee, are one, and is the three which he is then going to explain to him. Keshav mused a little. We do not know what thought passed through that mind, and said with humility, Sir, I cannot accept now more than what you have said already. He had told, so Bhagavata, Bhakta, Bhagavan. So then he said, Guru, Krishna, Vaishnava. So that means particularizing it further. So Krishna is the God, and the Guru is also a part of God, he is another form of God, and Vaishnava, the devotee, who belongs to the Vishnu sect. So particularizing that general theory of Bhagavata, Bhagavan, and Bhakta. So when he said Guru, Krishna, Vaishnava, this particularization Keshav could not accept. He said, it is therefore needless to raise this topic at present. Sorry, this is too narrow an expression. The one with the earlier one is general. So there is nothing wrong. If I say Guru, Krishna, Vaishnava, so that becomes a particular sect and particular philosophy. So that it will be making my very narrow-minded. People may construe it like that. Therefore, Keshav was rather hesitating to accept Sri Ramakrishna's words. The master said, that is all right, let us stop here. Sri Ramakrishna was very liberal. He would give you as much as you can digest. If you say, I cannot digest it, all right, stop it. A time will come and you will come for it, and I will teach you that. The mind of Keshav, which had been as inspired with the Western ideas and ideals, had thus received much light from the divine company of the Master, and understanding day after day the mystery of the Vedic religion, plunged into sadhana. Keshav started doing sadhanas, spiritual practices, after coming into contact with Sri Ramakrishna in a very, very deep way. This is evident to us because his religious opinion gradually underwent a change as he came into the close contact with the Master. The human mind, unless grievously wounded, does not feel like detaching itself from the world and realizing God as its all. Keshav got a shock when he gave away his daughter in marriage to the Prince of Kuch Bihar, a small state, about 3 years after he had become acquainted with the Master. He gave his daughter in marriage to the Prince of Kuch Bihar. This marriage produced a great commotion in the Brahma Samaj of India and split it into two. the party opposed to Keshav separated themselves from the society and formed a new one called the General Brahma Samaj, Sadharan Brahma Samaj. This was the Brahma Samaj, Keshav's, the split party, splinter party. It was named as Sadharan Brahma Samaj, the General Brahma Samaj. The master Dakshineshwar was much shocked to hear that the quarrel between the two parties over a petty matter. It was petty matter was, there was a rule formed by Keshav himself that girls should not be married. At that time child marriage was there. So he wanted to avoid that child marriage in Hindu society. Therefore he said, oh, no girl child should be married before 14 years. At that time it was considered as a marriageable age. So presently it is quite different. It is 18 or 19 or 20. So at that time he was a reformist. So he had himself fixed that age as 14. But his daughter was not fully 14. A few months, a part of the year was remaining. 13 plus she was. But he got a very good bridegroom. Therefore he married her off. It became a big controversy. How can you break the rule that you have made? You have been making us follow your rules. You yourself do not follow. So many other leaders tore away themselves from that party, formed the splinter group called the Sadharan Brahma Samaj. That is the incident that broke the Brahma Samaj into two. Hearing of the rule of the Brahma Samaj about the marriage age of girls, the master said, birth, death and marriage are things entirely under the will of God. See, birth, death, we know it is entirely under the God. That marriage is also under the will of God. We moderners also, we are perhaps all not agreed on this. But Sri Ramakrishna's words, they are for perfect truth. It is meant for all ages. Even now we should accept this. The marriage that takes place every day, everywhere in the world, they are also by the will of God. So marriage is not such an easy thing. It's a simple thing. It is by the will of God, it fructifies. Otherwise, many marriages, with all the negotiations and agreements, etc., they break at the last moment. That means the will of God is there. Until that will falls in line with your will, you cannot accomplish a successful marriage. That's what it means. They cannot be brought under hard and fast rules. So Keshav might have made a rule of 14 years, but it is destined that his daughter is to be married at 13 plus, and it has happened. What can he do? It is not his doing. So Keshav is not to be held at wrong. Why did Keshav set about to fix that? So he just thinks about the statement made by Keshav also. Keshav himself would not have done that rule. How can he fix 14 for everyone? When God wishes somebody to be married at 13 plus, it will take place, not Keshav's rule. So we should always give thought to this invisible but inexorable law of God. So when God's presence is there in anything, we should take that also into account. Then only our plans can work. So, Daivanchayavascha Panchamam. In Bhagavad Gita it is said, God is the fifth factor. 4 factors we can decide. But there is a fifth factor which is the will of God. Unless we take it into account, no work can be accomplished. So that's what Sri Ramakrishna is telling here. If anyone raised the topic of the Kuch Bihar marriage and condemned Keshav in the presence of the master, he used to say, how is Keshav to blame for doing that? He is a man with a family. Why should he not do that? Do what is good for his sons and daughters? What is there to be condemned when a man having the responsibility of a family on his shoulders does this without deviating from the path of virtue? There was nothing morally wrong about it. Only it was a sort of a rule he had made, so he had to break his own rule. But there was nothing immoral about it. Therefore, Sri Ramakrishna did not recognize it as any great blemish. Keshav in no way acted contrary to religion or morality. See the judgment of Sri Ramakrishna. He has rather discharged the duty of a father. Viewing it thus from the standpoint of the duties of a householder, the master always supported Keshav's action as not in any way blameworthy. However, there is no doubt that this blow dealt by the incident of the Kuch Bihar marriage turned Keshav's mind more inward and led it more rapidly along the path of spirituality. So, it is an important event in Keshav's life, and Sri Ramakrishna's pronouncements, his judgment on one of the great incidents of that age, which broke the party into two, and so many other so-called intelligent leaders, they criticized Keshav. Sri Ramakrishna chose to support him, and Sri Ramakrishna's support is the correct support. He never supported anything untrue, anything immoral, anything not virtuous. So he was supporting Keshav Chandra Sen in his crucial crisis. In that period, he stood as a rock behind Keshav. So there are many more incidents like this. We will take it up in our next reading class. Till then, we will stop here. Niranjanam nityamanantarupam bhaktanukampadhrita vigraham vai Ishavataram parameshamidyam tam Ramakrishnam shirasa namamaha. O Ramakrishna, the taintless one, the eternal one, the one with infinite forms, the one who has assumed a form for the sake of the devotees, the incarnate Supreme Soul, and the adorable Lord of all, we salute, bowing our head to thee. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.